button. All right, now we're live on YouTube. Welcome, YouTube folks. We are live on YouTube. Let me let the rest of the folks that are waiting in the waiting room in, and we will get started. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for registering and joining today. We have a special event. We're going to be screening the film, Selma. Wait, I lost the title. Go ahead, Rich. What is it? Selma. Beacon of Hope. Beacon of Hope. I knew that. Selma Beacon of Hope. I've seen the film one time. It's really fantastic. You're going to love it. We've got the creator of the film here with us, Rich Harwood. And I think you're going to really like it. And then we'll get a chance to do some QA and also just talk a little bit about how Rich came to make the film. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to, Rich, if you could just tell us, I know some of my listeners might not have had a chance to listen to the episode that we did about the new civic path a while back, or fairly recently, or maybe aren't completely aware of the work that you're doing. So before we jump into the film, can you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Harwood Institute in Selma and other places around the country?
Sure. First, I started the Institute when I was 27, which, David, I think we've talked about before, which for some people, they might think that was a few years ago, but it was actually 38 years ago. And, over years, we've become focused on what does it mean to bridge divides in this country, to create a culture of shared responsibility, and make community a common enterprise for not just some of us, but for all of us. And our work has evolved into, in part, a philosophy and a practice that we teach people that has spread to all 50 states and 40 countries. And one of the things that we're doing, we have a 4-part strategy, but one part of that strategy, which this film relates to, is to work really in depth in local communities. Right now, to demonstrate that we Americans at a time of division and polarization have the will and the ability to come together, solve problems, create a stronger civic culture in our communities, and show that communities can work for all of us, not just for some of us. As part of that, we're also undertaking this campaign for the New Civic Path, which is based on a new book I just wrote called The New Civic Path, how to restore a sense of belonging in ourselves and in this country. And I know we'll talk more about the New Civic Path as we move forward. And last thing is that, Selma, I think, is a reflection of a community that's on this new civic path and that also holds special meaning for this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in then, and we'll watch the film, and then we'll chat about it some. See if I can get this to work again. As we all know, I'm a rookie at all this. So let's see if I can hit the right buttons. And here we go.
Where's your faith?
My Lord, man.
In God? Where's your trust in God? Where is your hope in God? If you truly believe that is true, believe it.
That's right.
And say, for God I live, for God I die.
What does Selma mean to you?
A lot. Very much bittersweet. Like I told you earlier, I have a lot of family down here, so grandma, uncles, aunties, cousins. That love that I felt in my hometown is a love that I don't think I'll ever be able to get from anywhere else. But at the same time, the city of Selma it's not the best place to grow up in. It's a lot of violence, a lot of drug problems, a lot of gang problems. It's being such a small city, when COVID came through, it hit us hard. We had tornadoes and hurricanes to come through Selma and rip buildings off the foundation. But even throughout all that, we still Selma. I think Selma has been stagnant for so long to the point the people see that we're due for change, we're due for growth. It's time for us to make a difference. The generations before us, they made their difference. Even before them, they made their difference. It's our time, and I think a lot of us are starting to realize that it has to happen now.
All right.
What's the name of this neighborhood, Lawrence?
Well, this is the Rangeley Annex, but the neighborhood is called Smoky City.
Yeah. So there were people living
Yes.
here right
all
up to
of
the
these-
storm, right?
Yes. There were people living in this when the storm hit.
Oh, that's. No, I was just wondering.
What did I think when he asked me to come to Selma? I'm like, let's go. When do you want me to show up? Who are we going to speak with? Who are we going to meet with? How can we seek to do something productive? There's nothing to me that is more fundamental than to make sure that your eyes are open, your heart is open, your hand is outstretched, and that you seek to walk with others to improve our individual and shared lives.
I think the work that Harwood does and other organizations is helping us to come to that understanding that it's about us living and learning and growing and maturing together.
In the spirit of the work that we do, it was time to ask questions and to listen, not to pretend that we know something that we don't.
I want to welcome you all to the first annual Stop the Gun Violence. We're going to empower, we're going to educate, and we're going to engage.
Our children deserve this. They deserve a space where adults are intentionally planning for their success.
I think I'm here right now at this point for a reason. I thought I was leaving the community work when I got to the bench, and I was just about to be the judge that I never imagined that it was going to all come back full circle.
And did something happen while you were sitting on the bench that brought you back to the community work?
Every day.
What is it?
Systemic oppression.
These children in my courtroom have been beaten. They have very little guidance. Sometimes they're from 3 and 4 generations of Department of Human Resources family.
Our system doesn't seem to be attuned to the people that's outside the glass.
For so many years, we've watched the same things, buildings that are dilapidated and potholes in the street, and it's hard for people that have lived here to see this and understand why we're not progressing.
Our younger generation, they come from broken homes, they're impoverished, they just haven't had the right opportunity.
I routinely see 10th, 11th, 12th graders on 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade reading levels. And what has happened is most of your best and brightest have just left.
All of that is happening in Selma right now. But we also have trauma.
In the last 4 months in Selma, Alabama, we have had murders ranging from 14 to 17 years old. We got too many young people with guns. They got them. They got more guns than the police up in here. I'm telling y'all, look at the headlines.
Dallas County tonight, 2 teenagers and a 6-year-old have been shot in Selma.
The shooting happened on a busy Friday night as families were preparing for the weekend.
We have had overdoses with fentanyl.
Selma Police Chief says Xanax, fentanyl, and hydrocodone were found in Junior's system. While at school, the 16-year-old was found unresponsive and later died.
The devil's just throwing stuff out there for y'all to catch. He don't want us grown folks no more. He wants y'all.
When we think about what it means for people to be safe and our kids to be safe and ensure that they can live past the age 19, there needs to be a sense of urgency around that to address it.
You see violence the way that you do here, not just in physical violence. I'm talking about violence in the way we navigate and move for each other. You see that violence because of trauma.
All of these things, if you're a young person, for instance, they begin to envelop you and they begin to sort of seep into your life in ways that traumatize you and that make you believe that there isn't a future. We're losing potentially a generation to a set of circumstances that we actually have the ability to address. This isn't simply about spending more money. It's not simply about more programs. This is a question about, do we have the will and the collective effort to ensure that our youth and all Americans believe that they have a future? Or are we simply willing to write people off and leave them out and leave them behind? I think that's a fundamental challenge we face in society today.
The question was asked somewhere, am I my brother's keeper or am I my sister's keeper? I think that it's important we understand that we have some responsibility to be each other's keeper. So until we actually deal with healing, it will be hard for it to actuate.
But we do have to heal, and we do have to name people's experiences in this place.
You know, I'm a big believer in vision, and where there is no vision, people perish. And I think there's no sense of vision here. And not just vision in that, let's clean up her streets and redo her buildings, but a vision of what we can become as a community.
And to build community is to build human beings.
Now, we will have our sessions at the community center, and we'll sit down and we'll talk across the table to one another. But when we get up and leave the table, there's no coming together to solve problems.
How can we thrive together? Black, white, pink, green, doesn't matter what your color or creed, but how can we come together, get past politics, and let's get some work done?
And people are starting to realize that they're in the same boat. That it don't matter which end of the boat you're in, when the boat spring a leak, everybody going down.
We're a team whether we like it or not. We're gonna rise or fall together.
Either we're gonna grow together or we're gonna grow apart. That choice is up to us.
I have faith in Selma. I think Selma's gonna get back to being a very nice city.
What gives you that hope or faith?
Everybody in Selma just got that fight in their heart. And I feel like their history stems from our ancestors, the people before us, and Selma's just full of fight.
Selma, Alabama, 1965.
What's a story for everybody else is not that for us. These are our people. So where do I get hope? It's our legacy.
Selma is the home of injustice, civil rights, fighting for what you believe in.
We are here and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Known as Bloody Sunday, in March 1965, civil rights marchers were brutally beaten by law enforcement officers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma.
A lot of bad things happened on that bridge. At the same time, it brought out a lot of good things as well.
Out of that came a sense of hope and a sense of accomplishment, knowing that if we persevere, change does ultimately come to fruition.
I feel like the bridge is a staple of Selma. It's like our beacon of hope.
To me, the significance of Selma is that in 1965, it helped us see the work that we needed to do as a nation and go over the bridge together. Now it can remind us once again of the work we need to do as a nation, and that it's time to go back over the bridge again. But here's the thing. When we move forward, we cannot leave anyone or any community behind, including communities like Selma.
Well, today marks the commemoration of the 60th anniversary of what's known as Bloody Sunday.
We need to do this together. We're meant to go together, and Selma once again can help lead the way.
Selma is one place in America that can bring about change and be an example of change if we step up and do it. And I want to be a part of making that happen.
if we choose differently right now, I think it would be just as historic what we can do with grassroots organizing here as it was in '65.
Of course, I do believe in this little town. More than the town, I believe in its people. The spirit of community is very much alive here.
I want to show people you can be from Selma, and even as a young person, you don't have to wait till you get older, and you don't even necessarily have to get out of Selma. You can be right here, and you can make a name for yourself in the city.
I believe we need to sound a call that in order to restore our belief in ourselves and in this nation, we don't need more divisive politics. The change we need must begin in our local communities. And to do that, we need to get on a new civic path where we can turn outward toward one another, where we can uphold one another's dignity, where we can figure out amid our real differences what we can agree on and how we can get moving forward together. Look, what I'm seeing across the country, including in Selma, is that people are ready to go.
It's all for all of us. It's time for the generation to come together to let our future grow. It's time for all races to come together, everybody walk hand in hand.
I feel a sense of urgency that I have to do something more, and I want to help not only just the Black community, but all communities, because everybody matters.
What gives you hope about the future?
People like him, people like me, people like you, that's where the power is at. It's not in one or two people, it's in coming together.
And it's so incredible to see all the young people around here. Like, they're here, they understand the assignment and ready to do it. It's pretty clear, so they give me hope.
It felt like there was nothing else we could do but be in community and be together. But it is community and what we are building here that is so powerful and what is going to elevate us in the future, what we continue to do.
Whether it's in Selma or in communities all across this country, we are meant to go together. We are meant to be together. Now is our time. Let's go back over the bridge.
We thank you, O God, for your goodness and your mercy. We thank you for the privilege of being in Selma. And, oh God, give us the grace and wisdom and knowledge to understand that you have blessed us, that you've caused your face to shine upon us, and you've been gracious and merciful unto us. And so, Lord, we ask you to strengthen us, to grow us, to mold us and shape us as a city. And this we pray. Amen, amen, amen.
Let's just sit with that for just a moment. Well, congratulations, Rich, and the whole team. It's quite a film. I will say the second time through, I think it hit a bunch of different buttons for me. So so tell us a little bit, what brought you to thinking, deciding a film. It's a lot of work to make a film like that, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
What brought you to come to that decision?
Well, I hope that you'll share what buttons it hit for you this second time. I'm more interested in that than my response, to be honest with you. I think, it said that at the beginning of the film that we were there in March 2025, but in reality, David, we had been going to Selma for a few years now, talking with folks and engaging with the community. And we had we didn't start with the intention of creating a film. It actually never entered my mind. And it was only after a few years of, when you hear about Selma in the news, you hear about the youth violence and the shootings, which this film talked about. You hear about the empty buildings, which the film showed. You experience when you drive down the street, the potholes in the street, which are everywhere. There are abandoned buildings everywhere. You hear about, yes, 1965 and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but you actually don't hear about the future of the community. And yet, the more I went down to Selma, the more I felt the spirit of the people of Selma. Yes, I saw the empty buildings. Yes, I heard about the violence. Yes, I experienced the potholes in the street. But what overrode all those things was the spirit of people, the belief not simply in their past, but in their future. I heard about the fact that, yes, they are very proud of this bridge, but actually they believe that the bridge needs to lead someplace else now and into the future, and not just for Selma, but for the country. And so as we heard this more and more, that's when the idea of a film began and finally began to take shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, obviously, Beacon of Hope is the title, and there's a lot of talk about hope. But, it's always one of those places that, like you say, it's 1965, that's a long time ago, and, it's talked about a lot, but then nobody actually stays there and does the work.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's true. And, so many of us go down for these pilgrimages and to walk over the bridge. I was just down there for the 60th year commemoration of Bloody Sunday. I walked back over the bridge. And then we leave. And it might stick with us, but we don't necessarily stick with Selma. And, but the people there have stuck with their community, notwithstanding the ups and downs that you heard people talk about, notwithstanding the deep trauma that really does exist in that community, like so many other American communities. And I think, we just experienced the shooting of Charlie Kirk. I think there's at least rhetorically, a growing movement among some for disunity, not unity in the country. And I think what the bridge represents is, as we said in the film, is that we are not meant to be isolated from one another. We are not meant to live in fragmented ways. We are not meant to be fighting with one another in the ways that we are. We are not meant to withstand the kind of violence that exists in Selma and exists increasingly throughout our country. And we are meant to go together. That's what it means to be alive. That's what it means to be human beings. And so it's not about being Republicans, Democrats, or independents. It's about being Americans, but I think even more fundamentally, David, it's about being human beings. And what do we need from each other? How do we provide it to each other? How do we come to agree on how we're going to move forward together, notwithstanding real differences that will always exist among people? And how do we do that in a way that's constructive and positive and productive? And lastly, I'll say that ensures, this is something I'm hell-bent on, that ensures that all of us go over the bridge, not just some of us. And that includes communities like Selma. It includes places like Flint, Michigan, where I've worked. It includes places like Reading, Pennsylvania, where I just worked. It includes places like Alamance County, North Carolina, or Northern California, where we're doing work. It all means all.
Yeah, and and it's also what do we owe each other too. I think that was when I talk about what are those some of those buttons that touched for me is that was the idea of sort of caring for your brother kind of thing, and I think that's another piece of it too is we lose sight of that sometimes as well.
Yeah, I think so much, increasingly I find myself, I don't think it's because of my age. I think it's just increasingly I find myself talking about the need for us to remind ourselves to tap into our memory about certain things, to tap into our memory that we need each other, to tap into our memory that there is goodness uh, amid us, to tap into our memory that we are, as people, as human beings, I believe innately good. We are not born with evil in our hearts. We only learn that, or hatred, or bigotry, or division. We only learn that over time. That we need to keep reminding ourselves of these things, even, amid the shooting, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We need to remind ourselves that there is no place for violence in our society, and we need to remind ourselves that there is still goodness here that we can build on, that we must build on, and that we need to make visible to ourselves and one another to give ourselves a sense of possibility and hope for our future.
Yeah, well, I know that. I mean, I could ask my questions all day long, but I know folks want to get theirs in. But I want to ask one thing about it. There was one place that you asked, do we have the will?
Mm.
And I guess I'll say, do we? Do we have the will?
Um, I could say I believe we have the will, but that's not good enough. What I would say is that I have seen, I have been witness, I have borne witness to people exhibiting the will to move forward together. Quick story. You and I have talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning again. We began work in Reading, Pennsylvania about 3 years ago. At that time, 10 years previously, it was declared the poorest community in all of America. It was once predominantly white. It is now 70% Latino. It is fragmented. People had lost hope. The narrative of the town was that nothing good could happen there. And we began our work, it was around education. We began our work at the height of the culture war around education, right? Around arguments over critical race theory and DEI and book banning and all those things. And people said the community could not create a community-led, community-driven agenda around education. They did. Not only did they do it, no one ever talked about culture wars. They talked about what mattered to them in their lives, like early childhood education, after-school activities, English as a second language, ensuring that there were teachers who looked like the community as the community demographically was changing. Then people said, well, nothing good would come of this agenda. It would just die in the vine like so many things like it before in so many communities. And yet people did come together and create systemic transformational change on a number of areas, more change that I've seen than in recent times of my work. And so people can go to our website and get a free report called Reading's Ripples of Change and read about this. I won't take the time now, but what Reading has done, what communities in Jim Jordan's congressional district in Ohio are doing right now in Logan and Union counties in two separate initiatives, what people in Northern California are doing and in Alamance County, North Carolina, and in Selma, Alabama, is they're demonstrating that under the right conditions, which is really important, we can come together and create change and ensure that we all go back over that bridge together. It doesn't have to be just a dream. It is a reality. We need to spread it across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, of course, I have a bunch of questions about that too, but let's go ahead and turn it to the audience. I want to encourage people, whatever questions you might have, but as a kickoff, if nothing else comes to mind, I just wanted to say, if maybe you can share your initial reaction, and there's the electronic hand raise down at the bottom of the screen, or you can just wave your physical hand. I've got the participants list up, so it's easier for me to see the electronic one because I can't necessarily see everybody. But feel free if someone wants to jump in and just give us your initial reaction to the film. And congratulations again, the film's amazing, Rich.
Thanks.
Anyone want to jump in? Don't be shy. All right, I'm going to call on you, Isabel. What's your reaction to the film? Oh, no, sorry, we have Mikola. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I'm gonna turn my camera on here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. It's Makila. I tell people it's like tequila with an M.
Tequila,
So
perfect.
I just want to say, Rich, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I actually work for United Way, and so I know the work that you're doing in Northern California. Um, I'm also from Youngstown, Ohio. Uh, and so it's one of those cities also
Yeah.
after the steel mill left and, there's dilapidated buildings and jobs gone and all of that. So I kind of can relate to Selma in a way of like just wanting to pour back into your community. So two things. First thing is your story reminds me of a phrase in Swahili. It's Ujima. It's collective work and responsibility, how our brothers' problems are our problems, and we're bound together in that liberation. And so I love that message of like us coming together regardless, finding that through line, regardless of party and all of that. However, one of the things that came up for me with this video, and this is the third time I've watched it, actually doing a study, lunch and learn with our staff around this video, right? But one of the things that came up for me was about compensation. So not sure if you're, getting any funds or proceeds from any of the stuff, but I was wondering if they were going back into Selma, money was going back into Selma, or if people were paid for their time. I think that it's good that we go there and we get all this information, and we're collecting all that, but we need to also recognize the expertise of their lived experience. We need to, help with that cultural taxation that happens of, continuing to pour out. So I was just wondering what plan, if none,
Yeah.
was to
Yeah.
help that community a little bit.
I'm so glad you asked that. So a few things. One is one of the initial reasons for doing this was not nationally. It was because folks in Selma wanted to work with us, and we wanted to lift up their story so that particularly funders could invest in Selma. Whether they invest in us, I don't care. So this was a way for us to lift up Selma's story and invest. Then people in Selma started to ask us, would you show it nationally? So that's the first part. Second, in terms of compensation, we did not, just to be transparent, we did not compensate people directly in Selma. What I can tell you is the Institute, we're a small nonprofit. We do not have large amounts of money. I don't know how much this film cost, but we paid for every dime of it. We paid for all the travel involved in it. I paid for all my staff to go down there after we decided to do this repeatedly. All of our initial trips to Selma, with the exception of the very last one, we supported through the Institute. Selma did not pay for those. So that's tens of thousands of dollars that the Institute footed really for this. And I'm proud to be able to say that, and I would do it again. And the last thing I would say is that we're now continuing to support folks in Selma, and we will continue to do so. Now, whether or not we all collectively raise funds to do deeper work there and yes, support people there and make sure there's investment in the people in Selma, that's yet to be seen. But the folks in Selma now really, this is going to sound trite, but they're like my brothers and sisters. I mean, I love them. It's one of the reasons why we decided to do this. I also had relationships like that with folks from Youngstown because we've done work in Youngstown. And I just went back to Flint 25 years after working with Flint. And so we never stopped reinvesting in the communities that we work with. And that's just the way we do work. And it's important. And I say that we don't have an endowment. I don't have like huge reserve funds running around. It's just why I decided to do this work starting 38 years ago, and we're going to keep doing it that way. I hope that helps.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, Isabel, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for this documentary. Very interesting. Two words, I guess, came out to me. The first was the young man who talked about faith. And I think that's a huge thing, having faith that yes, it will get better. And I feel that's a huge issue in our society. A lot of people have lost faith and their behavior reflects that. The other word is feeling safe. And I think also people react when feeling safe, they, fight or flight or have reaction that are, really not productive, but not, it's not conscious. And we tend to put blame when people just react just because they don't feel safe. And I guess the last thing that wasn't specifically said in the documentary but came out to me is all the trauma. And somebody said, like, we live in a traumatized world led by traumatized leaders. And I feel like the hope and the faith that I have is by helping people in Selma, we can also help ourselves. So
Yeah, thanks so much for those comments. Just a few things. One, if you watch it again, you'll see that actually trauma is talked about. It's really critical. It's, as you know really well, it's present in so many, if not all of American communities, some more deeply than others for sure, Selma being one of them. And I'll just say really quickly in my book, The New Civic Path, there's a whole section on grief and trauma. And I think in communities, in addition to just individuals, but as communities, we need to learn how to work with it a whole lot better, I think. So that's one thing. Second, I'm really, really glad to hear you mention the phrase fight or flight, because in the book I write about this, we did a report called Civic Virus that's on our website. I happen to think that we have begun to use the word polarization as an excuse for not coming together. And I think to your point, what is actually really happening is fight or flight because we don't feel safe. And I think there are ways that we actually know how to address fight or flight, and we're not doing it. And we're not feeling safe. So that's a second thing. Third, I just want to go back to your very first point about faith. In the film, obviously there's, it's called The New Civic Path, Christine. In the film, there's a lot about religious faith, and we debated that a lot in our office, and we decided to include it because Selma is a community of faith. Wherever you go, people talk openly about their faith. I happen to be a person of faith too. Not all people are, but we included that. That said, at the Institute, our philosophy is what we call civic faith. And I think we need to restore or build our civic faith, our sense that people in communities need to be at the center of all we do, that people have innate capabilities, that community has to be a common enterprise, that hope is a choice, whether we create false hope or authentic hope, and that community is covenantal, not in a religious sense, but in a sense that we are in relationship with one another. And so I couldn't agree more with you on actually all three of the points that you mentioned. I'm really glad that you raised them. So thank you.
Yeah, Mary, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having this. I came across your institute. I live here in Indiana, and Michael is a connection on LinkedIn, so I've been following your work. And I like to share that I work in the pro-democracy space. I work with candidates running for office, so your work is pivotal. With that being said, I want to touch on a few points and get your thoughts and feedback, because when I'm working with candidates running for office, I always say start with a community project. What are you doing in community? What matters to your community? It's not about left or right. I always think of a dear friend down in a really red district. the community calls him, you got the pool, you're the pool man, because you got the pool for the community to have the summer recreation programs and everything. So with that being said, when you do these community initiatives and you're educating and you're talking about, moving the needle in education in Reading, how do you move those communities up the engagement ladder to more sustainable policy change and get them really involved in the political process? Because that's where we can make some fundamental institutional changes, because I totally agree. It starts in community first. You make the change, you build the connections, the relationships. Because on that flight or flight piece that you're saying, what I see happening is exactly what you outlined, but an additional component is people feel like they don't have any power anymore. So they're just like, they're checking out.
That's
So
right.
love to
Yeah,
get your
so
thoughts on that.
yeah, thanks so much for the great question. You should know I come from a political background. That's where I started. I
Yeah.
worked in political campaigns by the time I was 23. The last one I was an aide to a presidential candidate. Um, so a couple things. I want to start and go backwards. I want to start at the end of what you said. So I think so much of this is how people regain a sense of individual and shared agency. And that so many of the challenges, so this is a two-part answer. One, so many of the challenges that we face in society, as you know, first of all, they've been growing for 50 years, not the last 4 or 6 years. Right? And they deal with things like belonging, a sense of agency, whether or not you feel seen and heard, a sense of dignity, whether you feel part of something larger than yourselves, which politics contributes, but actually, they're all things that we need to do in our communities to reclaim, which is why I think starting in our communities is so important, which you've already said. And that creates the civic culture and the seedbed for larger systemic change. So in Reading, just to pick up that story, the change, the systemic change they created, not just the building that they did together, but the systemic change came from the community and got institutions like the school district, the community college, and others to work together to create larger systemic change along with the community. So that's point number one. And I think that, as you've already suggested, particularly today where we don't feel a sense of control and that we can make a difference, I think this is, and where we need to restore a sense of belief, and I think this is where belief comes from. This is really pivotal. We can't skip it like some people would like to suggest. Second, about politics, we don't, for instance, develop political candidates. We don't do campaigns, as you can imagine. That said, in places like Flint, or places like Reading and other places, so many of the people who came out of our work ended up running for office.
Yay.
Right? So in Flint, the school board was in time filled by people who went through our school. In Reading, if you look at I think it's 8 members of the school board, at one point, I think this is still true, 6 were attached to our work. If you look at the city council, that began to change as well. So, and then we have partners who actually were really interested in promoting candidates in certain kinds of ways. So there's kind of like this cascading effect, which I think is really important. The thing I like about it for us, for our work, I shouldn't say for us, is that that it helps to shift the norms and the ways in which people not only get together, but work together, and the ways in which they see themselves and see others, back to David's point, that then creates the kind of culture that can actually support elected officials who want to work in different ways.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
can see
that
that.
helps.
Yeah, totally. I can see that. And it at the core is community first. Community first. And when people see the change can happen, the hope gets sparked, people get more involved, and they see that they can step into the arena too because the work is happening.
Right. And in addition, in a place like Clark County, Kentucky, there's a report about this on our website too. What happened was when we first started working there, like in Flint, the mayor of Winchester, Kentucky, really didn't want to meet with me. And The reason why that's important to say is because they really didn't want to pay attention to the work that the community was doing, not the institute, but the community. Over time, people, as in Flint, said, no, we don't like the norms of the ways in which our elected leaders are working in this community. So they began to shift the norms of the community, which created different kinds of community forums around candidates, which got different kinds of elected officials elected, which changed the way people started to work together, both through elected officials and the community. And that became really important. But the shift in norms became really crucial to that effort.
Yep, I hear that. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We have a question in the chat, Rich. What are the necessary local conditions for communities like Selma and Reading to even begin this type of revitalization?
I think there are a couple of things. One is, well, there are a few things. One is, I think we have to think about what does it take to catalyze change in places where there is either inertia or communities might be stuck, or in high growth communities, which we're working in right now, that large swaths of communities are being left out and left behind. And there's resistance to seeing the whole community in many respects. And so I think we need to conceptualize change differently, which is that we often think about comprehensive change when we don't have the public will, and in many cases, the civic capabilities to create that. So those efforts die on the vine, and they create skepticism, frustration, and lead to cynicism, and then the game is over. So I often like to say, think physics more than civics. How do you catalyze something? How do you get energy around that? How do you fuel that so that you build momentum that then leads to a different trajectory? That's the story of Reading and other places. Now, to do this, we have to unleash a chain reaction of actions that can grow over time as opposed to starting too big. So our efforts start small to try to go big. That's one thing. The other thing is what I was just talking with Mary about, which is we have to pay attention not just to programs and strategies and initiatives, as important as they are, but to the civic culture of communities. Because in the 40 years I've been doing this work, actually the biggest predictor of whether a community moves forward is its civic culture. The relationships, the norms, the leaders, the organizations, the narrative, the sense of purpose of the community. And here's the good news, David. We know how to develop that civic culture in really practical ways while we're moving the needle on specific challenges that matter to people. And I think that's where the action really is for us. So.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear a little bit more about the ways we know how to build that civic culture. But I was going to ask, I was going to say something that you've mentioned to me before that also kind of, I was thinking about during the film is we talk about division, as you know, we talk about that a lot on my program. And you said something, along the lines of like, what gives these people the right to take over these spaces and dominate them and bring all this toxicity to them?
Yeah, look, my real response to your thoughts, it pisses me off to no end that we have elected leaders. Sorry, Mary, but we have, and I suspect you agree with this here on the call. We have elected leaders who believe that they can impose, that they're intentionally manufacturing and stoking division so that they can win elections. And I think feather their own nests, like plain and simple. I think we have media who believe that the ways in which they're going to get more eyeballs and more viewers and more listeners and more readers is to stoke division and divide us to get us to be with them. We have social media that has algorithms. I don't know who the hell gave Silicon Valley and other social media creators. I've been funded by some of them and I've talked to them about this. It's like, this was supposed to be a net benefit to society. It's become a huge negative to society. And what are you doing about it? Your algorithms are killing us, and they're killing people at times, right? They're leading to hatred and bigotry, right? They're killing our spirit. And so, you know, that's a description of what's happening and an emotional response. The question is, what do we do about it? And this is where why I think starting in local communities is so important. It's got to grow, as Mary was suggesting. Um, but I think we've got to start in our local communities and push out these culture wars. That's what they did in Reading. That's what we're doing in other communities. We have to crowd out these culture wars. It doesn't mean they're going to end, but it means we have to reclaim the public square and say, we're going to focus on what matters to people, not what we're declaring what matters to people, but what people say is important to them. And then we've got to get to work on it and start building together. And as we do that, we create a stronger civic culture, and then we can elect different kinds of people. That's going to take a while. Anyone who says that change is around the corner, we simply need a new president, we simply need a new Congress, or whatever it is. We said, that's when Obama came in, then Trump came in, then Biden came in, then Trump came back. So that's clearly not going to be the sole solution to anything. We've got to reclaim our public life, and we've got to set this country on a different trajectory, much like we did in 1965, much like we did in the abolition of slavery and women's suffrage and other things. We can't simply complain about it. We can't just wallow in despair. That never got us anywhere. Resistance is an important American tradition, but it still doesn't tell us what we're for. We can't surrender. We need to come back into public life, but we can't expect everyone to come now. We've got to go with those who are ready to roll and start building together. And as we build, people will see it like they did in Reading. And David, we can't incorporate people fast enough into that initiative.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in terms of, we can't ignore it, or we can't, I wanted to say, I know that, and I might get this wrong, might get some of the language wrong, so you can kind of correct me here, but I think it's a very pragmatic approach. I've heard you talk about the idea of, here's these three things, maybe they're culture war things or something else. Okay, we can't maybe get on the same path about those right now, but here's a whole bunch of things we can get on the same path about and actually make some progress on. But then how do you, it seems like one intuitively, I would say, well, when you work on those other things where you have more in common, that'll help create the environment that'll make it possible to attack those harder ones. And, in other words, we're not leaving those forever, right?
No, I write about this in the book. Look, for a lot of culture wars, what books we want our young kids to read. There is often something that actually needs to be worked through in our society. The problem is that we have organizations on both sides, it's not symmetrical, but on both sides, that have decided that they're going to weaponize these debates and impose solutions on people as opposed to make their case and have a real discussion about it. Like everyone has the right to make their case. You don't have a right to weaponize things in society and drive everyone away. Like, we need to say no. I believe the way to do that is, if you think about a wedge, we think about wedges in politics as wedge issues, things that divide us. But another kind of a wedge is a wedge that you drive in that becomes a wellspring. And I think we need to drive a wedge in that creates a wellspring that brings people back into public life and says to the people in culture wars, look, we hear you. You can keep making your case. We're going to work on things like youth. We're going to work on things like after-school issues. We're going to work on violence. We're going to work on a whole slew of issues. And as we regain our ability to deal with hard things, as we regain our civic confidence in ourselves and one another, we will work on these other things. Here's the deal, though. In a lot of cases, what I've found is those culture war issues begin to dissipate as we actually begin to address what really matters to people. But we've got to make a choice not to be held hostage by them.
Right. Right. We talk about that a lot, that a lot of it comes back to us. Like, we've got to stop rewarding the theater and rewarding those things, because it's then, we reward the theater and then we complain they don't get anything done.
Right. And, this isn't a good turn of phrase, but we keep fighting fire with fire. The way to put out a fire is to dump water on it. So, yes, we need to push back. Yeah, but I think we need to, I've been followed, you and I have talked about this. I've been followed around in different communities where we're doing work by different groups. And one of the things that I say all the time, I just got asked this in Columbus, Ohio by a group, is to say, look, we have to be able to declare what we're for. We have to be able to articulate why we're doing what we're doing. We have to say that we're not going to surrender. And we can't shame people and humiliate people when we're saying shame and humiliation shouldn't be part of public life, right? Like we can't do the very things we're saying we need to get rid of. We need to model a different behavior. That doesn't mean everyone is ready to do that. But those of us who are need to lead the way. And then those of us who want to do other building need to come and we need to make more room for folks who are ready to build together.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know we sort of scheduled until 3 p.m. your time. So we're kind of up against that now. So I really appreciate you making the time for us. Do you have any final thoughts, Rich?
Yeah, I would just say, since we're here, started talking about Selma, is the bridge obviously is a metaphor for all of us. That, yes, we walked over it in 1965. I think, the thing that's interesting about a bridge is it always leads somewhere, right? It starts somewhere, you're on the bridge, and then it leads somewhere. And so I think in our minds, it's maybe helpful just to keep the bridge, the picture of the bridge in our minds, the visual, that we are someplace, we need to go someplace together, and we need to move towards a different destination, which I think is a continual movement towards a more perfect union. So.
Yeah, and I think something you said in the beginning is really important, that this idea that you'll have a magic solution and we'll get it all fixed in 3 months, like that's not the way we're going to get there.
It's a lie.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, again, thank you so much, and congratulations again. It's a wonderful film. You and everybody that put the effort into that it's really quite amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, and thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. I think contact info is easy to find at the Harwood Institute website, and also outrageoverload.net is our website if you want to contact us. We're on all the socials. You can find our email, so feel free to reach out. Thanks, everybody.